It is Friday, August 23rd, 2019. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Out the Coop podcast. This is Kev Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Each week, I talk to our capital muckraker-in-chief, Sean Kitchen, about the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. Yes, that's right. Sean is back. Sean is back from doing his laundry. And it was a lot of laundry, folks, and he's done doing it. But we got to keep this short today because he's got more laundry to do today. So we'll keep it going. Welcome, welcome. So a lot of stuff has happened this week. The Amazon is on fire. Turns out Trump is the second coming of God, and he's the king of the Jews, apparently. Ding dong, the Koch is dead. Oh, I'm sorry. The Koch is dead. Bernie sets the bar on labor and the Green New Deal unbelievably this week. A new analysis from Politico, I believe, shows that the Democratic base and activists increasingly moving to Sanders, Warren, and Harris, and Biden has flatlined among activists in the party. Not that he ever actually had a bump to begin with. On that score, Biden's campaign pitch is starting to sound like Margaret Thatcher's "there is no alternative," recycling despair politics. His wife, Jill Biden, kind of like was talking to a bunch of folks, trying to get people to convince them to vote for her husband. And her pitch was, hey, look, he might suck on Medicare and medical insurance, and he might not be, other candidates might be better on a whole bunch of policies, but the polls show that he could beat Trump, so you might just have to swallow. She actually said that. You actually have to swallow a little bit and vote for my husband. I'm like, holy shit. And that's coming from his wife. So he decides that, shit, that sounds good to me. And he hits the campaign trail with the same message. Vote for me because the polls show that I'm your only hope. It's unbelievable. God. Meanwhile, Hong Kong is showing the world what organizing looks like. Holy crap, what is happening in Hong Kong is so much. We haven't even been able to touch this, given the craziness of our summer. This weekend at Free Will is their Sour Sunday, and that comes with 3 new sour releases, which I'll get into a little bit later. And they also have tomorrow on Saturday, they have a new Hazy Pale Ale called Relax and Chill that will be released at both locations as well. I went through my pineapple mash last week, and it was wonderful. Also, not to mention the extra special peach was pretty damn good too. But we'll get into all that. Hey, I want to give a special shout out to a brand new member. Thank you, John. John kind of joined at the $5 a month membership this past week. Thank you so much, John. John, and, be like John. Join John and become a member of Raging Chicken Press for as little as $5 a month. Simply go to patreon.com/rcpress and choose your membership level. $5 a month is like, you're thinking about this. That's a really good beer, right? That's like going to Starbucks once, right? For a month in order to support progressive media. We need to keep the movement, the media, and the movement. And that's happening right here at Raging Chicken Press. And things are going to start gearing up in the next week or so. So we're going to be pushing hard to increase our membership base to give us the funds to do what we need to do. Become a member of Raging Chicken for as little as $5 a month. Go to patreon.com/rcpress today. Want to remind everybody, tune in to the Rick Smith Show on Free Speech TV this and every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can stream the show live at freespeech.org or tune in to the Dish Network, DirecTV, or through the Free Speech TV app on Roku. And hey, while you're at it, make sure that you are listening to the Rick Smith Show daily. Listen to his podcast, iTunes, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts. Go to the Rick Smith Show podcast and listen to him daily. Had a great show, man. I mean, Stephen Catadis was on there this week, talking a little bit about what's happening with the dark money groups in Pennsylvania and around the state, which is pretty freaking awesome. So go check out Steve on the Rick Smith Show and all the kind of folks that Rick brings to our airways here in Pennsylvania. So, Sean, man, it's been a while, it feels like. I know that you had a ton of shit, laundry to do and stuff, and it's done now.
I was actually really hungover and sick last week.
Yeah, he had laundry to do.
I was hungover and sick last week. I have laundry to do today because I was in a week-long training that put my laundry back a few days.
Yep. Sean was getting trained on how to do laundry more efficiently. Sean was getting trained with how to do laundry more efficiently. And so now he's going to go put those theories into practice today and get the stank out of his clothes.
Oh, man. I'm looking forward to getting the fucking stank out of my apartment after this hot and humid week we've had.
Oh, no kidding, man.
Just like opened up some of my I've had to keep some of my cabinets open.
Yeah.
Just because they're on the outside wall and just baking with all that humidity and all. Oh my God! It's just I'm waiting for the moisture to dry out after this week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Well, it feels like that. This cold front that's still coming through, right? I mean, that's the other weird thing about the weather this week, right? It's just been kind of nuts in terms of the predictions. Yes, it's going to be rainy this day. Oh no, not it's going to rain. And then no rain, and then we're actually going to have thunderstorms that come through. It's just been kind of pretty crazy all week long, but. At least, I was going to say at least, but, that's only exacerbated by the fact of climate change, and we've talked about it multiple times, which gives us that kind of concerning bit of news that we get out of the Amazon this week. But listen, so today's show, we're going to break format a little bit with today's show. We are not going to be going through the news headlines kind of bit by bit and talking about each one here, and for a couple reasons. One, this is kind of I think our summer closeout show in some ways that we are, I guess we're kind of in a position where we've been moving in multiple directions. We've been trying to kind of put together times which we can get together to do the show this week. It is just kind of, summertime, right? And now the routines start kicking in again. And my kids are going back to school. I'm going back to work next week. Which is always good to give that kind of particular kind of structure. And frankly, Labor Day is coming up pretty fast, right? And as soon as Labor Day comes up, that is when the kind of political, the political world is going to be really starting paying attention to what's happening in the presidential race, but also the local politics kind of across the country. One of the things I didn't even mention in today's news rundown is we see that Hickenlooper pulled out, saying he's no longer running, and he actually decided he's going to run for Senate instead. Jay Inslee is no longer. He also pulled out this week, which is a shame in some ways because his insistence on running on climate change is the number one priority. I think it had a really positive effect on the actual debates and on the campaigns. But then he announced that he is going to run for a third term as governor of Washington, the state of Washington, which is also great. But anyway, so we're going to start to see that shift kind of pretty quickly here. And we're going to get back into kind of more of a routine. So one of the things I was talking with Sean today about, just as we were, thinking about for today's show, Sean had a really busy week. I have a really busy week of kind of prep for all my courses that begin next week. So what we kind of just thought about is kind of really thinking about this moment as kind of looking backward, looking forward kind of moment ahead of the political challenges and the political campaigns that are about to happen. And just kind of have a little bit more of a freewheeling discussion here, just get back in here. And I know that the people really missed Sean last week, and I appreciate, all the cards of support that became flooding in, hoping that Sean was going to get through his laundry and that everything's going to be okay. And I tried to assure you that, he is indeed alive and he didn't go off in a ditch someplace, but he's actually been busy. For real, he's been busy. Not pretend Sean busy, but actually real Sean busy.
I am back, yes. It's been a crazy summer.
Yeah, it really has.
A lot.
You've been busier and in multiple ways that than I think that you've been in a long time.
Yeah, since I was going back since I was bartending. I think maybe pre fucking with Wagner. I'm not sure, but yeah, no, it's been a busy summer. Definitely had a lot of fun this summer. I was able to go to Netroots, go to the Young Dems conference. I'll be helping out the Young Dems out here in Dauphin County. I'll be doing stuff with the Young Dems nationally. And then, and then, we had trainings all week this week. And then, looking forward to having some fun coming up in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, I look back at this. I mean, this is just kind of I was thinking about this kind of a lot. I mean, I tend to do this as like the end of, as I'm getting ready to go back to school, like, kicking and screaming because I don't want to go back to my mold-infested building at Kutztown University. I started thinking back about it, and it's been a pretty. I mean, for you, it's been a pretty significant summer. I mean, at the national level, I mean, kind of getting. In some ways, it's one of these moments that I think is, you're perfectly suited for this kind of moment, right?
So it's actually like weird because I've been thinking about this for the past week, probably, or a couple weeks. Like, it's almost like, I'm not going to say like depression or anxiety, but it's almost like my anxiety, like the weight of everything just like hit at once. Like, holy shit, the past like month, I felt like July, a lot more shit happened in July with my life personally in a good way than like the months beforehand. And it's just like it's still like trying to take that all in and conceptualize what's going on and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's been pretty interesting. I'm finally getting over that. And let's get some work done.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think that's a great attitude to have kind of moving forward. I really do.
Because I feel like, I still, said this earlier. I've said this to some people, I feel like the energy is dormant right now with the elections coming up. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we saw a couple weeks ago, Scott Perry out here had a town hall that, absolutely flopped. He's, first time he's ever going to be in a competitive campaign for a seat in his career. You think about Scott Perry's been handed these seats, extremely gerrymandered congressional seats or House seats. And, this year he's going to have like an actual first like race against a Democrat. It's his first like full term actually, being in a 50-50 district. Yeah. And he's signaling that he has no signs of changing.
Yeah.
He's freaking out, and we're going to be having what I'm really like excited about. I mean, let's just talk about it right now.
Yeah.
Hopefully Eugene gets through the primary. It's who I support pretty well. I love Eugene, but like the fact that like one of the top races in the country is in my backyard is pretty cool. Like this might be the top targeted race, congressional race in the country with DCCC money, red to blue. The fact that they're going to try to scalp a House Freedom Caucus leader.
Right.
And, just the added motivation behind that.
It's like who's buying? This is what I want to know. Who's buying the spines, man? Because they're handing them out like they're candy. I mean, seriously. I mean, that's freaking awesome. You know what I mean?
Do you mean?
Like the fact that you've got actually the DCCC and you've got organizations that have just been in Sleepy Joe camp for a long time, right? That they're actually kind of like putting in money and resources and targeting kind of races like this instead of just saying like, well, that's a really safe
And it's also I think,
it's freaking amazing.
Eugene's going to be the DCCC candidate out here. And typically in the past, the DCCC candidates haven't been the best, but I feel like with, I feel like there's legitimate concerns, within the progressive, but it feels like we found a candidate that everyone's going to coalesce behind within all sectors of this, within our coalition out here, Democratic coalition. And, we have a Democratic candidate who's going to, who's going to be there for us. That's how I'm going to put it.
Look, I look at it like this. You look at the work. You look at the work that he's done. You look at the work that he's done, right? Since he's, since he was elected, and again, he has not approached his job as kind of like an ideological progressive warrior or something like this, right? What he's done is he's basically said, okay, I'm actually going to do the job that I have here, right? And to actually audit, right? And not audit just simply for, are you spending too much money? But actually audit different agencies, organizations, school systems, all this kind of stuff, and expose, right? A whole bunch of wrongdoing, like with charter schools, for example. What he started doing kind of like in a range of different kind of school districts was freaking amazing. What he's been doing, and that's the kind of like approach, right? This kind of, from my perspective, to see this kind of like, you know, I'm going to be a pit bull of rule following, right? And I'm not going to pull any punches, and I'm going to make this stuff public. The crap that he went through, and he's been kind of like helping kind of put out in terms of what happened with the Catholic Church, is freaking amazing, right? So I mean, I look at his candidacy as like he's so well positioned, I think, to take that seat.
And we're going to have someone who's going to, you know, like actually represent everyone in the district,
right?
Which, like, you know, is something that Scott Perry doesn't have any time for. He doesn't want to pay attention to, you know, the people who are Democrats in his district. To where, like, you know, with Eugene, he's going to listen to everyone, and that's frankly what we need out here, and that's a huge step above like what we have right now. Like, yeah.
Right.
But no, I'm looking forward to that. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening out here. Central PA will be very, very targeted, not just for Eugene's seat, but for House seats. To flip the House, to flip the Senate, there's going to be some important targets out here for state seats. Yeah, I mean, like, who would have thought 5 years ago when I moved out here that, like, Pennsylvania, like, Central PA would be in play for Democrats?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Now that we have new maps, we have, like, the demographics are changing. The Harrisburg suburbs are becoming more suburban, more urban. You know, the district is becoming very blue within Cumberland County. No, I mean, like, I think you're one cycle or two cycles away from the Republicans getting wiped out here in some sort of meaningful way.
Yeah, well, I also think that what happened, I mean, I don't know if you saw this too as well this week. I know you've been extraordinarily busy, but like Susan Wild has basically put herself on the map this week nationally. Right. After Trump's comments this week about him, you know, being the king of the Jews and crap like this, and all his like anti-Semitic stuff that he said, basically telling a bunch of Jews that, you know, or, you know, telling Jews that if they, you know, vote for a Democrat, they're being disloyal to Israel. Right. Which is, you know, the most bizarre thing in the world, because didn't the right wing just finish trying to kind of like drive kind of Rashida Tlaib out of office, like by claiming that she was making that, and said, here Trump basically saying it, so you need to have dual loyalty, you need to have loyalty to Israel, whatever. But Susan Wild came out here and talked about how offensive it was, and I didn't know this. She is the only Jewish representative in the Pennsylvania delegation. Right, that blew my mind. But the thing is that she's, again, in Lehigh Valley. This is another absolutely critical area within the state, right? Which is, again, changing demographics, increasingly more blue, and more importantly, increasingly more organized. And she's putting herself on the map too as well. So you're starting to see these like interesting moves, like the fact that one, exactly as you're saying, center, like the center of the state is now being kind of like targeted by Democrats in a really conscious way. That you have organization that's taking place on the ground in these key areas. Lehigh Valley seems to be turning a corner. This is going to be really interesting. Yeah, and it feels like that a lot of the activists and people within the labor movement and people from Make the Road and all those groups, it really feels like we're all on the same page, which is awesome. Yeah, it's something. I mean, the energy, it feels like from being behind the scenes, the energy is there. It's just dormant. It's bottled up right now. And, you know, I was talking about this with someone. We think that that's going to change in a couple of weeks. I think that's right. Or not even in a couple of weeks. Like once the primaries start happening, and I feel like even after the convention, once the convention hits, that's when things are going to really pick up. I think we're going to start seeing, even with after Labor Day, right, is I think that we're going to start to see a significant uptick in kind of political activism, in part because you start to see the candidates are now starting, the presidential candidates are starting to spend, right, kind of pointedly in the kind of like, you know, the first primary states, like in Iowa and all those major media buys and that kind of stuff. And what that tends to do is that tends to kind of reverberate into the kind of the mainstream media, which gives more attention, and then it kind of, you know, goes right down the lane. People start paying more attention. And I think that that's also going to be happening because you've got some great races that are happening kind of like in the state, so that we're going to see kind of that increase of activity, at least people paying attention. I started getting, I have to say, the past few weeks I've been getting increasingly nervous, right? And feeling start the edges of despair, right? Like, oh, screw that, man, we're freaking done, right? Biden gets this here, and there's not a lot going on. And then I'm thinking in my head, well, wait a minute. It's the second part of the summer. Like, I mean, I'm literally driving around where I live, right? And there's like hardly any cars on the road because everyone's on vacation and all this kind of stuff. And I'm thinking about, people really aren't paying attention right now. So I think the switch is going to flick. It's going to be, I think it's not going to be like immediately all lights on, but I think that we're going to start to see the speed starting to ramp up and the tension ramp up and the organizing ramp up beginning right to get going in September.
And I think there's going to be like a weekly, like Tuesday with Toomey style demonstration going after Scott Perry out here in central Pennsylvania.
Nice.
So that's something I'm definitely going to be looking forward to follow. Like I made a comment a couple years ago on Twitter, like I am not moving from Harrisburg until Scott Perry loses. So let's do it.
Why, you want to move? Is that what you're saying? Sounds like, come on, I want to move.
No, but I want to get DC. I want a job in DC in 2021.
Is that what you're going for? You're going for 2021 in DC?
Yeah, absolutely. Got to set the sights high.
All right. Well,
selling out.
I'll tell you, Politics and Prose Bookstore is a great place to work.
Is that a place you used to work?
Yeah, I used to work there. Yeah, it is. It's actually awesome. I mean, it's one of the best like political bookstores kind of around. The people that work there are awesome. It's just like it was an awesome place to work. It's kind of like an institution in DC. But
do you go back down there? When I was your age, I used to work here.
I used to work here. I remember Jim. Jim was an assistant manager here, and he showed me how to speed wrap books. That's right. For Christmas time, that guy could wrap a book faster than kind of like you could say Shaduza.
It's kind of like the people who used to work at Pizza Boy for 6 months and come back in, and no one knows who they are.
No, exactly.
I used to work here.
Like, oh, that's great. What do you want?
So at about 50 other people.
Yeah. I worked at a bunch of places there, so kind of in DC. But it's I've said this 1,000 times. I love DC. There's a class of people in DC that I really detest. But there's most of the people who actually live in live and work in the district. If families there and things like this are freaking awesome. And if you're willing to kind of get beyond the kind of, the bullshit of the kind of political operatives and people kind of always looking to kind of one up you in order to kind of increase their kind of space and things like that. And you find the right people. There's just amazing people there.
But I guess like one of the things on our list that we were just talking about, I guess we can go on, is the energy in the party.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think it's with Warren and Sanders. I think there's just no other way of putting it, and that's how it felt like over the summer. And that's where the younger people are at.
Hi.
Right. No, I think that's absolutely true.
And I feel like a lot more people are going to be. I think it's going to be Liz Warren that's going to win the primary. I don't know.
Look. I go back and forth in this. It's like there was
I feel like Liz Warren is the alternative to people who want to vote for Sanders but won't because he's not a quote unquote Democrat or something like that and get wrapped up in that game. But I feel like that's. I also feel like I don't know. I feel like it's going to be. I personally feel like all of the young people are flocking to Warren at the moment. And I feel like that's where the within these groups like the YDA and within like other. I feel like that's where they're going to go with.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I'm really hesitant to kind of to kind of game this out in some ways because I think what happens. I think really the critical question at this point, like, is how are Warren and Sanders going to work together? Right, and I don't necessarily mean kind of to coordinate their campaigns per se, but more or less what we saw, we got a little taste of this in the second debate, right, where you had when Warren and Sanders were on the same stage, it was going to be pretty. It was pretty clear that the strategy of most of the other people that were on the stage with them was going to be to go after Warren and Warren and Sanders, right, as a way of going after that particular wing of the Democratic Party, right? So they were going to try to go hard after that, and any attempt to split them in that debate did not work. And what the Warren and Sanders essentially did instead was basically double down on the kind of the progressive stuff, refer to each other on multiple times, right, to give each other credit for things, right, and to set the bar even higher in terms of kind of like it's the progressive wing of the party, to the point where they came out of that second debate being on the stage. I was really nervous about them being kind of sequestered on the one stage and away from Biden, but they were on that stage, and basically the rest of that folks, you could see it happen about halfway through the debates. There were people who said, "Oh shit, we made a mistake." Like, we just put more distance between our desires to be on the nomination, to get the nomination and the actual nomination, because Biden and Warren came out of there looking like kind of like a strong team. So what happens when this goes down? Like the next debate set for the end of September in Houston, it looks like there's at least 10 candidates. That window closes in about 6 days, right? Or 5 or 6 days. They have to meet the criteria by the end of this month, the 28th or 29th, which is 2% in kind of 4 national polls plus 130,000 individuals donors. And there's 10 people that have made it. There's several people that are sort of close. But not. So we might get 10, 11 people on the debate stage, and then that's going to really start kind of focusing the discussion. What's going to happen at that point? What's going to happen when it gets down to 5, right? 6 even, right? How is that going to play out? I think, frankly, when there's more time to go after individual candidates, that's when Biden is going to start losing ground. Then we're going to see what happens with the Bernie and the Warren supporters. If I have one concern, my one concern has to do with, and maybe this is just kind of after the legacy of 2016, but the way that kind of supporters of either Warren or Biden, or Sanders, either Warren or Sanders can basically kind of dig in and do the kind of black or white either or kind of discussion, and basically saying you have like a small group of Sanders supporters kind of like spreading stuff on social media that say Warren is kind of the Antichrist, and then kind of Warren supporters, a bunch of theirs, how Bernie is going to take us into disaster, and kind of like, split the base of the party. I don't see that happening at this point, but we'll see what happens. But I'm telling you, I'll take Bernie. I'll take Warren. Right? Then we have to talk after that. So, yeah. So let me ask you this though. So why do you think people are going to Warren?
I think she's a safer choice. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I also feel like that's also where. I mean, it's also like the demographics of everything too. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? Like of the Warren and Sanders supporters, like the split.
Yep.
Like, yeah. Sorry, but no, I feel like it's I feel like it's like the split of demographics. Sanders supporters are more high school educated, where Warren's more of that liberal academic side of things. Yep. And I mean, there's a divide there. It's like they're going to have to bridge. Either it gets worked one way or the other. But it'll be interesting to see how everything goes.
Yeah, and what's been interesting, I think, about their strategies too, as well, instead of becoming divergent, they're more convergent, right? Yeah. So Warren has actually been really, working it towards building the movement, right? Where she started with the plans and has moved towards a movement. And if you look at Sanders started like, we're going to build a movement, and now he's kind of releasing these plans. So, I mean, it's really fascinating just in terms of where things are there. I think people suggest how Ari Melber on MSNBC, which I rarely ever watch this guy, right? But I happened to come across one of his videos because he was interviewing Politico's Maggie Severns, my fault, where who was looking at some of the kind of online donations and from grassroots Democrats. So basically, instead of looking at the aggregate numbers of all the money or all the individual, she basically broke it down. I want to see how many people who are making small donations who tend to be kind of in the kind of activist core, like the people who are going to be required in order to get this nomination. right? And so she broke all this stuff out. And what she found is that over the month of June, right, you see 3 surges, right? And that is Warren, Sanders, and Harris, right? The biggest surge has been Sanders. Second has been Warren. Harris had this big bump after the debate number 1 where she took on Biden. This big bump, but they kind of came back down. But she is still like way ahead of anyone else besides Warren and Sanders. So you got Sanders on top. You've got Warren coming next. You got Harris next, and Biden. If you look at his numbers during that same period, right? It looked like someone was like had just hit the the code blue or whatever, right? It's a complete flat line. Right, so we know then what that means is that his funding is coming almost exclusively from big donors, right? And he does not have a lot. He's not producing a lot of kind of momentum or energy among the base. So this is going to be. I think it's going to be increasingly important as we move forward. So I'll try to put a link in the show notes for today to check that stuff out. It's worth kind of looking at, especially given the narratives about national polling that we get in the mainstream media and cable news. But looking at some of the kind of the details here paints a little bit of a different picture.
And then I guess we should get to the big news of the day.
Which is what? The Amazon's on fire?
Well, that. But
the lungs of the earth are burning down because of fascistic government.
David Koch got to watch the burning of the Amazon and everything before he passed away this week.
Ding dong. Ding dong! For who
I guess
the bell
try not to
tolls.
say anything wrong of the dead, but sayonara. Listen, I think it's a really good opportunity to let people know that David Koch is dead.
Well, I'll tell you what. You know what? When my daughter heard the news, this is what my daughter said.
We are the Union.
We are the Union.
The mighty, mighty Union.
Mighty, mighty Union.
And I don't know how that happened, but whatever, So,
But I have no sympathy for people who destroy the working class. And it's like that Mark Twain quote. I do not wish anyone death. I do not wish anyone to die, but I've sure enjoyed reading some great obituaries.
yeah, no, exactly. It's
but we're now going to go through the media cycle where David Koch was this philanthropist, this activist, this industrialist. This person that we should be really we should really put on a pedestal for his work in society. When that is 100% absolutely not the case.
Yeah, it's kind of like this, right? It's like, we're going to get this narrative that's going to do this. So if you look at David Koch, if you look David and Charles Koch, right? David Koch was the good one, right? Now you put that in a broader context, right? You're talking about so David Koch was slightly less evil than Charles, right? The difference being is that David gave lots of money to the arts, right? But still, he undermined the fabric of of society, right? So it's like we're going to get this thing Charles, blah blah blah, and this comparison. But it's like once you start comparing, I
have no sympathy for someone who dedicate their livelihood to attacking working class people,
exactly,
to undermining unions and undermining the left in this country. You know what? Good riddance. See ya. Hopefully, you don't burn too fast in hell. But
yep.
I mean, no, it's that type of thing where it's just sorry, not going to express sympathy here with this guy. His organization is funding a lot of groups in the state of Pennsylvania. We have the Commonwealth Foundation, we have the Fairness Center, we have Free to Teach. We have all these right-wing front groups that the Koch brothers have propped up in Pennsylvania who are going after working-class people who, are making sure that poor people remain poor. And that, this is a good time to talk about, how shitty of an organization the Commonwealth Foundation and others are.
Yeah.
To remind people, this is what they funded. You're not getting any lip service from me. This is what they did, and their main objective is to crush unions and to destroy working class solidarity.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So it was only fitting that I believe it was the Wednesday night the Wednesday night that Steve Catanese from SEIU, 668?
Yes.
Right. President of SEIU 668 was on the Rick Smith show. I'm talking exactly about this. Now, I'm not saying like Steve or Rick had anything to do with today's news or anything like that, but I'm just saying it was a good, I think, send off to kind of remember this about what the Koch brothers have done and continue to do. Right. And
what their field soldiers will continue to do here in Pennsylvania.
Yep, and all his charitable giving, let's remind everybody what that charitable giving did. Yes, it got his name on buildings and things like this, but you know what it also got him? Huge tax breaks, right? Which he then funneled into breaking kind of working class organizations. So, sayonara, see ya, later, I don't know. The world has got a little bit more space in it for organizations, so that's good. So cool. So, Sean, if you had to kind of like think about like this next year, right? Kind of coming up, and when do you think? What are you kind of looking? What are you watching out for? What are the kinds of things that you think people should be paying attention to?
I don't know.
Yeah, just curious. I'm just curious. Legitimate question. I'm just like, legitimate question.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening locally. Get involved locally. We need to really, one of the things like, I've been focusing on national politics too much for the past like year and a half now. Mm-hmm. But like, we really need to focus on flipping the state Senate in Pennsylvania and flipping the House and making sure we have Democrats controlling one or both chambers. So we can have a say in the map-making process for 2022, which will then ensure us pretty much a permanent majority within the legislature. Mm-hmm. I mean, the lines are changing so much within Pennsylvania. The demographics are switching. Rural Pennsylvania will probably be losing Senate seats. We'll probably be losing House seats. Philadelphia's population has been growing, so Philadelphia will be adding seats to their to the state assembly. And, we have to flip one of these congressional seats. Like, we have to pick up either I was going to say Wallace, but either Fitzpatrick has to run. We have to beat Fitzpatrick, and we have to pick up, Perry's seat. Mm-hmm. Because we're probably going to be losing a congressional seat due with the reapportionment. And, that's going to affect how our congressional lines are going to be drawn for the next 10 years.
I'm really glad you brought up the Fitzpatrick one, because I do think that is a absolutely critical seat to target. And I think that, and
also there needs to be, like, one of the biggest issues I heard with Wallace was that Wallace was not fully on board with labor and didn't want to work with them. And there needs to be that type of candidate. Like, we need like those type of good candidates in all those seats.
Well, let's say this goes both ways, though, right? I mean, this goes both ways. It's like, on the one hand, is like, yes, I agree. I would never kind of disagree with that. But also, labor has got to be a little bit more strategic too, as well, right?
Labor will never not back Fitzpatrick, because they know Fitzpatrick will be there with him 100% of the time when it comes to votes. That's just the politics of it. It's transactional politics, I know, but not defending it. But there needs to be a really good candidate to take out Fitzpatrick, because Scott Wallace, who wasn't that great on the issues, telling, pretty much, and keeping labor at an arm's length through that whole process,
right?
Needs to realize that in order to beat Wallace, there has to be an excellent candidate to at least keep labor on the sidelines.
Right, and I think that the important thing going forward, who's going to emerge as a candidate to, to challenge Fitzpatrick, I just don't know. And
there's a couple out there already. So
I mean, that's what I mean. Is that who's going to actually emerge is going to be someone who's going to be that strong candidate. We shall see. But I do think that from my view is that labor should be in kind of like a holding pattern, in terms of endorsements at this point until we get to look, I mean, obviously, if you get some kind of like pro-corporate Democrat who kind of embraces charter schools and that kind of garbage, right, and says that's what direction we should go, well, then, sorry, bets are off at that point. Then the Democratic Party is shooting itself in the foot, right? But you get a candidate that kind of comes out there and has got a really strong record, right, and that even if they need to be kind of brought up to speed on some kind of issues on labor, but they're not anti-labor, then I think labor needs to hold off its endorsement of Fitzpatrick, because Fitzpatrick at least needs to have that kind of in the back of his mind that he needs to worry about his seat. Because as long as he's getting the kind of like, especially kind of PSEA, right, and some of the major unions out here, as long as he's getting those endorsements early, he knows that he's got that wrapped up, right? And I think that he's got to know that, look, Bucks County is changing, right? Just like a lot of demographics around the state are changing, and he's going to actually have to fight for it. And again, Fitzpatrick is, if you look at,
but I don't see labor jumping out in front of Fitzpatrick right now within like a year and a half before the election.
No. I'm not saying that.
I think that's, but like, it will take a perfect candidate for labor to jump on board with Democrats in this district.
They don't even have to jump on board yet. They just have to stay out. Right? I mean,
well, for that to happen, there has to be a really great candidate that they can trust.
Yep.
And like, I mean, just from hearing with people in the county, Wallace was not that person. Yes, he was progressive. I get it. He was progressive and all, but he wasn't willing to like get behind other people's issues. Like, no, these are my issues, blah, blah, blah. This is the way I'm doing it, and not like listen to others. And, when you have a lot of money and millions of dollars like that can get in the way, your ego can get in the way.
Exactly.
Yes.
So,
but I actually think it's going to be easier to pick up the 10th out here in central Pennsylvania is to pick up the first.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. Oh, don't. I'm not even saying I'm not saying that this is like a a strong possibility that Fitzpatrick can be beat, right? I'm just talking about like how we approach elections for the long haul, as opposed to it just being this kind of like cycle by cycle, right?
But it's also the type of thing where, I mean, that also goes upon the Democrats for not having a good bench and not being organized in those areas.
Exactly.
And when you don't have a good party, a strong party, you're not going to have a strong bench. I mean, like, look at it now. We're only starting to see like a strong bench emerge in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
For the longest time, it was look at DFAS, for instance. Look at who he came in with: Rob McCord and Kathleen Kane. Mm-hmm. Both of them went to jail.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that was our bench back in 2012.
Yep.
And now look what our bench is right now. Like, you have Katie Muth on there, you have Summer Lee, you have others who have, they might not be top A-list candidates, but they're pretty damn good B-list candidates that should be considered for some of these statewides that are coming up in 22.
Yep. Well, I think that, the point that you made here is that, I would think one of the things that to watch going forward and kind of why kind of get involved locally and not just spending all the time with the presidential election is kind of what you led with is, I think, most important thing to let's remember is that we've got the census coming up, right, in 2020, which means also drawing of the congressional lines. Right?
Yeah, and Democrats are not going to allow what happened in 2010 to happen again in 2020.
Right, but in order to make sure that doesn't happen, we have to make sure that we kind of are electing as many Democrats as possible, both at the state level and the national level. Because remember, the decision that was made, right, that court decision that kind of redrew the lines, that gave us more fair districts than we had before, that is just for kind of representatives in D.C. That has nothing to do, that did not affect the state lines, right? We were talking in the state house and so on. So that's all going to be kind of like, on the table in terms of part of these elections. And what's been encouraging is that a lot of the local activists who've been getting involved with politics, running for office and so on, seem to be keyed into that. So pay attention to those local races, right? If you're, thinking about, you got a candidate who's running out ahead, right, at the presidential level, you get that nice little fundraising email that kind of comes in and say, hey, give another $50 to give another $5 or $10 or whatever it is to this candidate. Once again, you might want to hold off on that sometimes if it looks like your candidate is doing really well, and think about where can you put some of that money in terms of local races, right, and regional races that are going to have an important impact. And also to get involved not just in campaigning for presidents, not just in campaigning for that, but actually campaigning for people at a local level too is going to be absolutely critical. So this is one of the reasons why, again, if you can, become a member of Raging Chicken Press by going to patreon.com/rcpress. What I would love to be able to do is to kind of get people reporting on the ground from some of these key races around the state up this next year. The other thing that we're also going to be doing here is that we're going to be bringing in ideally, assuming we can make this work, doing some kind of more interview shows, shorter interview shows, like we've done a little bit before, where we're getting to hear from some voices of activists and stuff that are kind of on the ground, kind of fighting the good fight. So we shall see. But so that's one of the things I think that we need to look out for the statewide races, thinking about kind of the redistricting and so on, kind of going forward too. You see any other kind of major, say, kind of issue stuff, like issue sets they're going to be kind of coming to the fore in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, actually, the 6-week abortion ban might be making its ugly head in the fall time. Mm-hmm. So look out for that. Douglas Mastriano, who was elected to the state senate in a special election after the abrupt resignation of Senator Alloway. He introduced this. The other person who could introduce the companion bill in the House is Stephanie Borowitz. Shocker there that the two most white nationalist legislators in the Commonwealth are also extremely anti-choice and or pro-birth at this point, and want to take rights away from those who aren't white Christian men.
Oh, yeah. There's always that joy when it comes to Pennsylvania, right?
And it'll be important. I hope, for my purpose, I hope they run the bill. It's going to get vetoed, but having the video on file will always be good. Yep, exactly. Yeah, and so, for all those right-wing Republicans and Democrats, for that matter, who decide that they want to kind of have government stick their nose into the decisions that kind of women make when it comes to their bodies and their health care, this is what we've got to say to them.
Fucking nosy? Eat your money gone.
That's right. Eat your money gone. That's when my sound drop for the hair. So if I had to talk about some of just things that I'm watching, I mean, obviously, given where I'm positioned, let me just give you what my read of the land is when it's coming to higher education funding in Pennsylvania. As you've heard me talk about, I talked about this last week for a little bit. ABSCUF, my faculty union from the 14 state universities, faculty union for the 14 state universities, still is going to be. It was going to be entering, this year without a contract. And the statewide union and the chancellor's office have decided that though they're going to pursue a different approach to bargaining this year, they are doing interest-based bargaining, which basically instead of each side coming with a proposal to the table about what they want and having to kind of meet somewhere in the middle, they start with things of mutual interest and try to kind of work out for the best interest of everybody, right? Call me cynical, call me skeptical, but those things concern me, especially when the guy sitting in the chancellor's office right now is the guy who ran the higher education programs for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? Who have all sorts of interest in the kind of the technology approach and the kind of cool Silicon Valley approach to it, which usually means kind of finding ways of kind of gutting labor and kind of removing skilled labor and replacing with technology and kind of data, right? The guy is incredibly skilled. He's very, I think, likable in a bunch of ways. And I worry that he's going to have the ability to kind of get set in place a bunch of things in this contract, which is going to kind of lead to some devastating consequences down the road. So we shall see. But here's my read. You can quote me on this one. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong at this time next year. But I believe what's going to happen is that we're going to get a decent contract. That there's going to be some structural changes that are going to happen to the state system in terms of how we deal with governance. One of the problems with interest-based bargaining is that, those of us in the union who had worked for years for increased transparency of the negotiations process, right, and the issue-oriented process, those who worked to basically say we need more kind of accountability in terms of the overall negotiation process where members can hold people accountable. Interest-based bargaining pretty much means that the people who are making the decisions and setting the terms of the debate are the people who are in the room doing negotiations. This goes back to a very older model of the way that bargaining takes place. And again, if I'm wrong about that, you let me know. But so I think what's going to happen is that we're going to get this contract negotiation is going to carry on for a while, right? My guess is that we're probably going to get to some close to some sort of resolution somewhere in the mid to late semester, maybe even into the new year to 2020. And right down the road, and right down after that is that then we're going to start to see the chancellor's office make some moves to have some major consolidations among different programs, to use the retrenchment article to kind of get faculty out of particular locations. And to really kind of fundamentally alter the structure of the university system. And this is why I say that. If you listen to the budget hearings last year, Chancellor Greenstein was basically saying that, look, this year we're dealing with budgets that I inherited. And this year things are going to remain pretty much staying. We're trying to stabilize things, I think is the word that he used. And we're not going to see any kind of major moves this year. Next year, however, is going to be a difficult year, is I think the language that he used. And anytime you say somebody like that, say difficult year, it means that there's going to be a lot of kind of movement and changes that are going to happen in terms of the way that we do education in the state system. And how much of that is actually being explicitly discussed at the negotiation table, again, your guess is as good as mine, since we don't know very much from a member perspective about what's happening with negotiations. But at the statewide level, I'm concerned that we're going to start to see the retrenchment article used when it comes to kind of the consolidation of academic programs, and we're going to start to see the financial levers being pushed on retrenchment coming in the spring. I could be totally wrong about that, and this could be just me being completely skeptical about things, but we'll see where that goes. The good news is that that the PA Student Power Network has been kind of like building their organizational power across the state for a while now. As I mentioned last week, there's going to be a chapter that is starting up at Kutztown University, which I'm very psyched that some of my former students will be involved in. And that is going to be a kind of important key factor, is that students are also going to have to begin to organize around the issues that are kind of the most critical for them. One of the things that has come out in this, and it's something our statewide union, Ken Mash, president, Ken Mash, has put out, is like Pennsylvania, one of the key problems is not faculty salaries, as management likes to say. As a matter of fact, they just released data that shows that faculty salaries have basically flatlined for the past 20 years or so. There has been no increase. And in some cases, we've actually lost wages, right, when you adjust for inflation. And we've seen an increase in temporary faculty members. Right, that's kind of one of the key things. And Pennsylvania consistently ranks at the bottom when it comes to state funding for support of higher education, when it comes to student loan debt, and when it comes to the overall support, financial support from public education. So those things are the real causes, which again goes right back to what we were talking about before, the importance of kind of like flipping what happens in Harrisburg in this next election. So that's some of the things that's on my radar, especially as I'm heading into the beginning of the semester on Monday. So I'm looking forward to that. Anything else you want to throw in, Sean?
No, I think that's about it.
That's about it. So I just wanted to give me my weekly update from Free Will. This is this Sunday. I believe it starts. Let me see where do I have the time for it. I think it starts at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock or so on. I'll have a link in the show notes. This is Free Will Sour Sunday, and they have 3 new sour releases that they will be rolling out. 3 brand new bottle releases, right? That release, and 2 food trucks, which will be there on that Sunday. The 3 bottle releases are Orchestrated, which is a Foudry. How do you say that, Sean? I don't know this beer stuff. Foudry. Fouder. Foudre. Fooder and barrel aged sour ale blended up to 3 years.
Are just big barrels, pretty much.
That's okay.
Massive oak barrels.
Anything that has any kind of French lettering in it, I don't know how to say. So It's a mature and effervescent beer with notes of white grape and vanilla and tartness through finish. Was bottled way back in September 2017. That comes in at 5.3 ABV. Then there's the Mojito, which is always one of my favorites. That is a rum barrel-aged sour ale with key limes and fresh mint sprigs. The mint sprigs come from Peace Tree Farm. Again, this is part of Free Will's commitment to locally source as much as they possibly can and build much more of a collaborative relationships. That comes in at 5.2 ABV. And Honey Gone Wild, and that is brewed in collaboration with the folks over at Haymaker Meadery, and it's a wild ale brewed with honey, aged in rum barrels and cherries, and later dry hopped with Amarillo. And that comes in at 7.9 ABV. Again, all those bottle releases happen on Sunday. Most of those are also going to be available on tap along with a bunch of others. And tomorrow, on Saturday, they're going to be releasing Relax and Chill, which is a hazy pale ale brewed with oats and hopped with Simcoe, Centennial, and Calypso. And that gets notes of kiwi, citrus pith, peach, and concolor fir with an earthy undertone from the oats. And that comes in at 5.5 ABV. And those will be available both locations in 4-packs beginning tomorrow. So check it out. It's a good way to end the summer. I know I'll be picking up some of those myself to celebrate maybe over Labor Day. Probably won't get to it until then because it's going to be a crazy beginning of the semester for sure. Anything else for the good of the order, Sean?
No, nothing too much. Just looking for the weather up here in Harrisburg. It's going to be in this upper 70s now for the next week and a half. So I'm looking to get back out and get some hiking done.
Yeah, nice.
I've done about 30 miles so far this month.
Nice. Oh, and I should say, too, as well, tomorrow is the move-in day at Kutztown University and several of the state system universities across the state. I will be there. ABSCUF will have a table at the main tents there. I believe that PA Student Power Network representatives will be there, too, as well. So if you happen to be in the Kutztown area or you're at Kutztown, you're listening to this podcast, swing by the ABSCUF table, and I'll be there probably, beginning around 10 or so, I think is when I get in. So I'll be out there kind of talking to folks about what we can do to build power at Kutztown University and beyond, and to promote what we're doing with ABSCUF at KU. So it's been a good one, Sean. It's good to have you back, man. I've missed you. I know you've been busy, and I know everybody else has missed you too as well. But right now, it's got a recording time is coming up there. Sean's turns out he's got a laundry voucher that runs out in about an hour, so he's got to get running out there. And
I actually they moved my bank branch on the west on the East Shore in Harrisburg. Right, they closed it down, and it was an actual so now there's no Wells Fargo besides downtown or the West Shore, which completely screwed over the whole entire community because that was an actual busy branch.
Yeah.
So I had to run the Rite Aid today to buy a stick of chapstick. So in order to get cash back for my laundry today. Because I did not feel like going to the bank and parking downtown at 8:30 in the morning, get a ticket to get a $20 bill out of the machine.
There you go. How about that? How about that? First world problems indeed. No. No, that sucks. Well, it shows you, again, big bang consolidation. All right. So, hey, everybody, thanks for sticking with us. And we hope that your summer is coming to a positive close. And make sure that you soak up the last of the summer vibes. Make sure that you soak up every last bit of relaxation and soul-cleansing joy that you can, because the fight is going to get real in the next few weeks. So, anyways, thanks for hanging out with us. We want to remind everybody that you can help support us. Go to patreon.com/rcpress. Become a member for as little as $5 a month. See you next week, all. See ya!
Fucking nosy.